All right, let's go ahead. Welcome, everybody. We have a full house. Just out of curiosity, how many people here are here for public invited to be heard? Okay, keep your hands raised if you're here for fracking. Keep your hands raised if you're here for our firearms and Second Amendment. Now raise your hand if you're here for something else. Okay, just checking, just checking. All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can we do a roll call?
Yes, Mayor Bagley.
Here.
Council members Christensen. Here. Finley. Here. Martin. Here. Peck. Rodriguez. Here. Waters. Here. Mayor Bagley, we have a quorum.
Let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So I don't know how many people here that I was seeing online that kind of peruse some of the local groups. A lot of you are here. This is your first council meeting. And so what we're going to do first, or very shortly, is it's called Public Invited to be Heard. Anybody who wants to speak during what's called first call, Public Invited to be Heard, you need to make sure that you put your name on a list like this. There's one out there. If your name doesn't get on the list, you can still talk to us tonight and say what you want, but at the end of the meeting. So we're going to go through this list first. We're going to do our stuff. And then if you don't get on the list or somebody comes here later, you can tell them they can talk at the end of the meeting. Also, just get it in your head, after 3 minutes, doesn't matter how much I love you, whether I know you, whether I don't like you, whatever you're saying is awesome, bad, whatever, you're done. So I'll cut you off. And that's just because we'd like to go home before 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. All right. Do I have an approval of the minutes for May 8th, 2018? I have a motion and I have a second. Can we vote, please? Oh, sorry, Dr. Waters?
Yeah, I have, my notes here are on the first agenda we got. I have a couple of corrections I'd like to make to those minutes. So now I'm on page 13 of the initial packet that we got. So let me get to page 13. Bear with me just a moment. Oh, sorry to take so much time. So in the second full paragraph on page 13, there's a sentence that says, this was referenced to my statement, he further stated that one think that she'd be one thing, and the last sentence should read, Councilmember Waters stated that if he can't get everything he wants, then he will take everything he can get for this community, okay? Which is a little different than what's there. Everything he can get. With those two corrections to the minutes, I'm ready to vote.
Great. Will you guys accept a friendly amendment? Councilmember Finley? All right. Let's vote. All right, that passes unanimously. Is there anyone who has agenda revision, submission of documents, or motions to direct the city manager for future action? Mayor Pro Tem Christensen. Try again.
I need the city manager. Okay. He's drying himself off. I wanted to confirm that the affordable housing discussion will be taking place at the next meeting.
I think the next It is a go for it.
No, it's not.
And at that time, will we be voting on the things Kathy Fedler brought forth, or will that be the following week?
Voting for an ordinance, because
Voting for, Kathy Fedler brought forth at least 5 things that we were supposed to be voting on, including the percentage of affordable housing, the pay in lieu decisions, and some others. Yeah, Karen knows.
Good evening. Mayor and Council, Karen Roney, Community Services. So yes, what we will be bringing back on June 12th is all the items that you gave us direction. You wanted some follow-up information. Keep going. And so we will be bringing all that back, all associated with the inclusionary housing ordinance, and you will be giving us direction about what you want the inclusionary housing program to look like, which, and then at that point in time, after we get direction from council, then we will proceed with what we need to do to prepare an ordinance. But we have all the items outlined from the last conversation you had regarding inclusionary housing, and we'll be bringing all of those items back for further direction from council.
Okay, including the percentage and the cash in lieu.
Correct.
And all the things that Kathy had.
All the things associated with the
All right.
inclusionary housing ordinance.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, the second thing I had requires me to hold forth for a little bit here. Over a month ago, we had an estimated 1,000 people march on City Hall and demand that we do something to address gun violence. A few weeks ago, 30 Altona Middle School students also marched down to City Hall, and Chief Butler, Mayor Bagley, and I spoke with them. So far, this council has done absolutely nothing. I called for a public forum about that time where the community could talk from all points of view, pro, con, whatever, and learn about the issue. And I received no second. Tonight we have an assortment of pro-gun rights people, and I would hope we also have people who are for gun safety. I'm going to read the Second Amendment, which is one sentence
hold on,
long.
hold on. So now's a good time to remind everybody. So tonight, what will not be permitted is, regardless of why you're here, we're going to have what's called decorum, right? Everyone in this audience who's here for public invited to be heard will get their opportunity to speak. And whether or not you agree with Mayor Pro Tem's comments or not, whether or not I cut her off and tell her it's appropriate, that's up to me because I'm the chair. So let's just be respectful, and we'll get through tonight. Sound good? Okay, cool.
The Second Amendment is written very broadly, and it's one sentence long. But usually only the second part of the sentence is read. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I think that's something we can all agree on. In 2008, the Supreme Court of the United States decided on the Heller decision. On page 54 and 55 of that decision, they stated that the right of the Second Amendment is not unlimited. Quote, "It isn't a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever, in any manner whatsoever, and for whatever purpose." They also said, secondly, that nothing prohibits setting laws, imposing conditions or qualifications on commercial sale of arms, or on special conditions such as prohibiting possession by felons, the mentally ill, or domestic violence. or in sensitive places such as schools and government offices. So, that being the case, I would like us to actually have a public forum on a Saturday where we can all sit down, all of us, and discuss how we feel about public right, how we feel about guns in our society. Perhaps at the Aura Center, which is what we've done before. We had a very successful forum out there, and I suggest that it might be good to have Chief Butler, people from the pro-gun side, people from the gun safety side, the city manager and the city attorney or his assistant, and everybody be able to sit and talk with each other, because we're all Americans. Secondly, I would like staff to find out if there are unlicensed sellers at the stadium gun show, and if so, I would like staff to draft a letter to the Boulder County Commissioners requesting that they require all sellers of any firearms at the publicly funded arena require background checks. Those are two simple measures. Do I have a second on the public forum?
We have a motion and second. We'll have some Ms. Skit, you're in the queue. I guess I don't see any. I'm just going to say a couple of things. I believe that I'm going to speak for most everyone here who is here for the pro-gun side, as they've been labeled, would also vehemently argue that they are also 100% for gun safety. I consider myself on the pro-gun side. I also consider myself on the pro-safety side. But I also think that we just had I mean, the reality is, my view on this is what is happening throughout our nation, the discussion we're having is important. The question becomes, what can local governments do? What is appropriate? What is inappropriate? And there's a lot of debate on that. And we just had a retreat where we talked about not chasing squirrels. And this would be an extremely divisive topic of conversation. You might say, oh, but it's so important we have to have it. We can talk about it, but I mean, you just have to read the paper. I'm not going to gain some magic understanding of why people are committing school shootings. If you want to compare the amount of school shootings to other elements of crime, domestic violence, et cetera, we can start talking about where we should focus resources, et cetera. But essentially, at the end of the day, we could have a vote. We could do what Boulder did. We could not do what Boulder did, and it's not going to make a bit of difference. We've got 18 months left as a council, and I think that we should be focusing on the 3 areas that we identified at our retreat. And I think if we have staff start chasing these squirrels, every week we bring something up that's different. Prairie dogs. I mean, it just will never stop. I think we should let staff do their job, and we've instructed them on what to do. I think we should do that. Now, if somebody on council wants to hold a public forum, I say go nuts. I think we have. I mean, if people want to get together and talk about that, that's great. But I wouldn't be for encouraging city staff to use time and resources to start developing ordinances and having forums in order to change anything here locally. Councilmember Martin?
No.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I was ready to say almost exactly the same thing. I think we should talk back and forth with our constituents much more than we do. If I were sitting in your chairs out there, I would be frustrated at my inability to ask questions and receive an answer. Therefore, I think that having a public meeting on a non-council night, I think, or Saturday, is a good thing, because participatory democracy is our ideal. However, I think that we are in the point in the law where we should probably not spend time drafting ordinances. we've got a lot of things that are going to affect public safety more immediately than that on our plate, or at least I hope it's more immediately than that. And we've got the city of Boulder conveniently testing our ability to do anything on this score. Therefore, I would like to have the meeting, but I hope we will not see fit to take it any further than that at this time.
Councilmember Finley?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. See, I got Bagley right.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you.
This is a federal issue. I don't think it will change anyone's mind to come together. I think
Can you get into the mic a little more? Can you pull it closer?
I don't think that having a public forum will change anyone's mind. It will just give people a chance to yell at each other. I don't think the school shooting issue is a gun issue. I think it's a mental health issue. So I won't be voting for this. It just sounds like a great excuse to take up staff time and to take up everyone else's time when nothing can come of it because it's a federal issue.
Councilman Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. We had the opportunity, and we may get a chance tonight again, to spend some time reflecting on what is or is not a public forum. If you look at the legal definition, this is a public forum. It's a limited public forum. Standing on the street corner out there and expressing your First Amendment rights is an open public forum. And there's all, permutations of what is a public forum. Personally, the image of an event where, with all due respect to Mayor Pro Tem, where people are presenting information for the purposes of trying either to educate. I'm not certain that people need to be educated anymore on the Second Amendment or on what the law says. If that's the purpose, I don't think that's a good use of time. But if there's an interest in bringing people together to listen to one another, to share what their worst fears are and what their best hopes are, and if we can parse, there's a couple of references already to school shootings. That's a huge concern, but that rolls up into what the school district does with active shooter protocols. It's broader in the context of mental health and what we need to be doing as a community and what those investments should be. That's a little different than what Boulder did with an ordinance or what anybody might want us to do with an ordinance. I mean, if you parse the issues, they all require they're all complex, they all require a different approach. So if the purpose of a forum would be to persuade people, that's not going to happen. If the purpose was to educate people, I don't think that's going to happen either. If the purpose is to listen to one another, to share both worst fears and best hopes, and how do we move forward together as a community to protect our children, to address mental health, to secure the health and safety of the community through responsible gun ownership and what that looks like, then I'd participate in that kind of a process. And there are good methodologies for that. But it's not the kind of forum we had here last Tuesday night, where people stand up and provide specific information about an agreement, and so people are well informed. That was a need for sharing information, for educating an audience. This is different. So depending, and I would not favor directing staff to spend time on this either. I would favor me committing time to participate, and I would participate if the purpose is to bring people together to listen to reasoned, both concerns and aspirations for the future of this community. That's how we grow together as a community. It is a very divisive issue. We could play a leadership role in overcoming some of the divisiveness by modeling what it means and looks like for people of character and concern and compassion to come together and listen to one another with respect. So if that's what it is, I'll support it.
And I guess I'm just sitting here just about ready to see the precipice that we're about ready to leap off. And like Dr. Waters, if we have a forum, I will be there. But again, we only have management at the city level that's so big. And if we have a forum that involves, if we have a forum, it's a public meeting, we have to keep minutes. Valerie will be there, city manager will be there, Eugene May will be there, Sean Lewis will be there, Sandy Cedar will be there. And then the question becomes, how much longer are we going to push off affordable housing and inclusionary zoning? How much longer are we going to push off the other things? And I mean, this is not a small topic. I mean, Tuesday night at this section of the agenda, we put this on the agenda item because certain members would bring up, certain members of council, not anybody even on this council right now, certain members of council would bring up issues at the last moment on council, and it'd be 11 o'clock, 11:15, and we were exhausted, and they'd be insisting on votes, and we'd make bad decisions, and we wouldn't have the data. So we said, well, let's put it at the beginning. So almost, I'd say every 1.4 meetings, we come up with a major issue that we want to give to staff, and that takes weeks, months, and this time is not, even though, I mean, tonight we're going to be here all night, and you're welcome to be here. The public is welcome to be here. I'm not complaining that I don't want to hear public invited to be heard, but it takes time. 3 minutes times 40, 60 people, that's going to take up all the time tonight when we could be doing the business of other things. And so if we have this tonight, then we have the forum. This is an issue that's not, you just go, okay, well, great, we had a forum, and walk away. This is an ongoing, serious issue, whether it be you're concerned about children in schools or whether it's you're concerned about losing some of your Second Amendment rights. So it's just going to, this is going to snowball if we do this. So we just had it. I mean, we just spent a Friday saying that we weren't going to do this, but I fear that we are about to. Mayor Pro Tem Christensen.
As you know, I am not the one who's been putting off affordable housing. I've been pleading with us to do that since November. So this would be taking place on a Saturday, such as one we had about a year ago at the Hour Center. It took 2 hours, and we had a very interesting discussion about a very serious issue. I cannot fathom that we are unwilling to even spend 2 hours to discuss an issue that 1,000 people asked us to address.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I am just asking about a point of procedure because it was my understanding that when the council came together and had a quorum, that a staff member had to be present. I don't know why the entire senior staff has to be present. Does it really? Am I wrong in my understanding?
Eugene?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. I think it's the discretion of staff to put appropriate resources when the City Council holds public meetings. We want to make sure it's done well, that the council is informed and has the support that it needs. And therefore, oftentimes you do see a significant portion of the senior management attend those meetings so that we have the best, most knowledgeable staff at your disposal.
Dr. Waters? Oh, sorry, Harold?
So I'll give the legal piece. I think when we're required to have other folks there, it's based on the official meeting and having Valerie there to take official minutes for the meeting. That's where that comes in. But obviously, I don't want to get too. Can everyone hear me now? So it depends on what we're doing. It depends on the structure of the forum. It depends on what. I mean, we would want to build it appropriately so it serves the purpose that council wants it to intend, or the council wants. So it's hard to say whether it would be 1, 2, 3, until we really understand exactly what it is you all want to do.
And I don't know what we want to do, but I'm pretty sure the 1,000 people that marched on City Hall and the people that are here tonight, they don't want us to have a 2-hour meeting and just talk. People are demanding action, and my only point is we don't have the answer. Dr. Waters?
Thank you. I wonder which agencies or which groups in the community would be equally as interested in hosting a dialogue among members of the community to which we could be invited. Whether or not the Interfaith Council or another nonprofit in the community, whether some of the connections that Mike Butler and the Department of Public Safety have to say, you know, that's a worthy conversation, but not for the city or the city council to sponsor or the city staff to host or plan, but to which we could be invited as listeners, as participants. For me, that has way more promise. And not just as a one-off event, but as an ongoing conversation. I suspect tonight, I'm almost positive tonight, we're going to hear more worse fears on both sides of this issue. And at some point in time, if we could move that to a discussion about best hopes for the community, and I know I sound like a broken record on this, but it shows up every Tuesday
It's a pretty song.
night.
Top
Well,
40.
But that is the way for us to kind of transcend the divisions is to acknowledge that we could create the worst fears, but we can also create other futures for ourselves. And I'm guessing there are others in the community that would be willing to join or step into that and invite us to be part of it, which I think has a better feel for me than I don't. You and I sat next to each other and talked a lot about squirrels. I don't want us to change squirrels. This is a big issue, a big concern, but it's bigger than this council, and it's one I'm hoping that others in the community might be willing to step in and provide some leadership on as well.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'd like to echo some of Councilmember Waters' sentiments in the concept that this is a dialogue that deserves multiple stakeholders, not just a city solo lift. Be it also our other elected officials, such as our state representatives, state senators, the county commissioners, maybe the county sheriff, and those kind of stakeholders as well, because this is an overarching issue that does supersede the city limits of Longmont. And so I do believe that there needs to be multiple stakeholders involved in such a forum for it to be worthwhile. So that would be my sentiment.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I concur with the gentleman on my right, and I think that one stakeholder that Councilmember Rodriguez didn't mention that is probably the most important one is the school district. And possibly we should consider seeing if school district would like to participate in a forum. But I think that what I'm hearing is that a rush to get something done fast is maybe not the right way to approach this.
All right, so Valerie, could you read back, actually, Mayor Pro Tem Christensen?
Well, it seems obvious that I do not have the vote, so I will withdraw that. Do I have a second on my motion to have staff find out whether there are unlicensed sellers at the gun shows at the arena, and if so, to draft a letter to the Boulder County Commissioners demanding that they require all sellers of any firearms at the publicly funded arena require background checks. Do I have a second on that?
Councilmember Waters?
Here, if you would amend that motion, I would second, to ask staff simply to first get the facts before authorizing anything else. And it would take one phone call, I would assume, to do that. What are the parameters of the regulations, limitations when it comes to a gun show at the fairgrounds in a publicly funded, it's not a publicly funded event, but in a venue that was created with tax dollars. And if indeed there are issues we ought to address, then we could direct staff to author a letter. But short of that, it's, I think, a phone call to get the facts straight and then decide what to do.
Nobody's in the queue, but so I own a lot of firearms. Antique ones, muskets, Civil War revolvers, AR-15s, shotguns, long guns, high caliber, low caliber. I mean, I like guns. I've bought a lot of guns at the gun show. Tanner Gun Show, it's like, woo, boys, it's Tanner Gun Show, let's go. It's like Christmas 12 times a year. I've always had to, except for black powder weapons, the state of Colorado currently requires that we all have to pass a background check before we leave those facilities with a from license. You want to require everyone to have a FFL before they sell a gun. Right now, the Colorado law is that you have to actually, before you sell a weapon, you have to make sure they pass a background check. Everyone.
I just read the law today. It says that unlicensed sellers do not have to require a background check. That's the issue here.
So anyway.
If that's not true, then
that's okay. It doesn't matter. I just, again, my question is, currently, Boulder, anyway, we could talk about the law, et cetera.
I'm not interested in Boulder. I'm interested in Longmont.
No. What I'm saying is I understand that. Fairgrounds are not in Longmont. They're in the county.
Yeah.
The county, cities, et cetera.
That's right.
There was a law passed a few years ago that basically states municipalities of any kind cannot pass gun restrictive laws that are more restrictive than what they require at the state. So a lot like oil and gas, it's a preemption issue.
Okay.
And part of my concern is that we're going to go down a rabbit hole chasing squirrels. 6.5 years later, we're fighting a fight that we basically have a public forum and we're telling people, calm down, everybody, we can't do this. And so I wouldn't have any objection for city staff to placing a phone call and writing a letter saying, I don't know what it would say, to tell you the truth.
Well, if it's true that our state law has been preempted that way, then there is, once again, like gas and oil, nothing we can do.
So that was, I think it was you, Councilmember Martin. Boulder's going to test that, push against it, and we'll see what happens. But was there a second for that or no?
I'll
Okay.
withdraw it since there's no interest in it.
All right. Okay. Any other agenda revisions? Okay.
I just need to let you know, or the audience know, that we added Resolution 2018-59 to the agenda at the last minute. It will go on as item K under the consent agenda.
What is item K, or what is item J?
Item J, it goes through item J, oh, I'm sorry, it goes as item J, I'm sorry. I already added it to my agenda.
Okay, all right. Whew. We're in luck, people. We get to have a meeting. All right. City manager, you have a report?
No report, Mayor, Council.
All right. So we're going to go on to special reports and presentations. And I've got a proclamation here, which probably is what brought people out. So by way of explanation, there are three kinds of proclamations. They're the ones that people submit, and I go, I'm not reading that. They're the kinds that I come up with myself, like the renewable energy event, or the renewable energy goal, 100% renewable energy by 2030. And then there's ones like this that they ask me to read it, and I change it to what I feel comfortable with. So if there's somebody here, if you're thinking, well, why doesn't he do a proclamation on the Second Amendment? Write one up. Get it to me. If I like it, I'll read it. If I don't, I'll change it. And if I really don't like it, I won't do it. So this is a proclamation designating June 2nd, 2018 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day in Longmont, Colorado. It is not a proclamation saying do away with the Second Amendment and take my guns. Whereas every day 96 Americans are killed by gun violence and more than 200 sustain non-fatal firearm injuries. I checked that stat. Whereas the rate of suicide by firearms surpasses the rate of motor vehicle fatalities in Colorado. I checked that stat. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from dangerous people. And whereas to honor the lives and lost human potential of Americans stolen by gun violence, a national coalition of organizations has designated June 2nd as National Gun Violence Awareness Day, in which anyone can participate by wearing orange. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to all we can do to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now, therefore, I, Brian J. Bagley, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim June 2nd, 2018 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day in Longmont, and I encourage all citizens to support the local community's efforts to honor and value human lives. Now, is there somebody here who would like to come up and accept this proclamation? I believe Sarah Abachowski and others who are here with Moms Demand Action. Are you here? Great. Would you like to come up and say a few words? You sure can. You want to go ahead and turn on that microphone so we can hear you?
I sure can. Hi, my name is Julie, and I am part of the Moms Demand Action group here in Longmont. We're a group that was founded the day after the Sandy Hook shootings, when a bunch of mothers had gotten together and just declared that enough is enough. We're not about taking away anyone's Second Amendment rights. We're just about creating a safer place for citizens and gun owners. National Gun Violence Awareness Day was established in 2015 after a young teenage girl was shot and killed. She was mistaken for somebody else. Her name was Hadia Pendleton, and she was killed in Chicago. And a bunch of young kids got together and decided to wear orange, because orange is a color that defines safety, and especially in the gun culture, it's a color that hunters wear to keep themselves safe. It's a color that activists in New York and Chicago and Florida wear to kind of talk about safety. So it's a color that we're going to wear on Gun Awareness Day to talk about just bringing awareness to all of the victims of gun violence. They happen everywhere, big cities, small towns, and rural communities. So I hope that all of you guys can support us in that day. Thank you.
Well, we certainly do, which is
Yes.
why we did the proclamation. So why don't you come up? City Council is going to take their picture with you. And when the Second Amendment supporters here give me their proclamation, I'll read it. Just remember there's no open firearms in City Hall. So when you show up with your hunting weapons, just make sure you leave them in the car. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to first call public invited to be heard. And so later on in the evening, we are going to be addressing 9A. It's an ordinance on second reading. I'm sorry, 9. Is it C or B? C. So if you raised your hand earlier and you want to speak on the topic of oil and gas, I'm going to ask that you don't do it at the first public invited to be heard. I'm going to ask that you wait until the public hearing on that particular topic. Now, if you're like, oh, I got to get home because the kids are, duct taped beneath the stairs, speak now and go home. But we'd like to get all that information and that public testimony, done all at one time. And so, if I call on you, sir, in the future, I'm going to have to call on everybody. And so, if you haven't got your name on the list, I'm about ready to start. And if you run up to Valerie, if there's anybody here who wants to get their name on the list, I'd suggest they get up here, and I'm going to start real slow.
Mayor, I did want to say there were some individuals that wanted to speak on oil and gas but needed to leave, and we did tell them they could sign up in
Okay.
public invited to be heard because they weren't going to be here during the public hearing portion.
Perfect. Then can you raise your hands if you folks are here? All right, I see 2 folks. We're going to go with you. 3. We're going to do 3. And then, all right, let's start with you, sir.
My name is Ed Granados. I live in Humboldt Circle. Okay. Ed Granados in Humboldt Circle.
Can you hand that? Can you? Yeah, or could you hand me back the list? I think his name's on there, so I can start crossing it off.
Closer? Okay. Well, you're really close. I'm interested in the City Council supporting an educational type forum. And it would be on topics related to the real-time monitoring system for methane that was described at last week's meeting. Okay. I think this is really critical for ensuring the safety of the people of Longmont. Okay. The topics for this discussion, I have technical aspects first. There's a broad category. And things I would like to hear, and that would be a description of this technology, advantages of real-time versus current system, the number and location of monitors, what chemical species are currently monitored, what chemical species will be monitored in the future. Okay. The second line for implementation would be the timeline for the implementation and critical factors in that timeline. CU completion date, implementation date for Longmont, and a presentation of the critical factors in the timeline and an explanation of how they are being addressed. Next topic is data analysis. How is the data processed? Explain the specifications that relate to the data points. Show samples of real data obtained from Boulder County. Next topic. Follow-up procedures when out-of-spec data is obtained. Review current local, county, state actions that would follow out-of-spec occurrences. Okay. And the last one, what happens to companies that repeatedly contaminate Colorado's atmosphere? Past experiences, anticipated changes in protocols. So, in summary, I'd like to see a detailed presentation covering these topics. I would like to have the opportunity to ask questions after each slide is presented, and follow-up discussion and question and answer section.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Mr. Stump.
I'll defer till the gas hearing.
All right, great. And the hand that went up in the back, come on up, ma'am.
Elsie Klassen, 967 Hover Ridge Circle, Longmont. I first want to thank you for spending 5 hours until almost midnight last Tuesday listening to roughly 200 questions about the oil and gas ordinance, and also allowing your constituents to present some of our concerns to you directly regarding the staff's responses. The ordinance you're voting on tonight is a win for oil and gas, but not for Longmont residents. You yourself said at the open forum last week, Mayor Bagley, that we're making a pact with the devil. The proposed ordinance just doesn't go far enough. It doesn't protect our fundamental right to a healthy climate. It doesn't protect our air, land, and water. It doesn't change the unjust laws that have removed our right to local control. Fracking is a violation of our rights to a livable planet. I'm a nurse. I would compare fracking to cancer. Oil wells, like skin cancers, including deadly melanomas, are visible. But most cancers affecting our internal organs aren't seen, and symptoms may not appear until they progress to the critical stage 4, often too advanced for treatment to be effective. Going subsurface with fracking can lull us into a false sense of security. What is real is that by compromising with the oil and gas companies and passing this ordinance, you may be placating many Longmont residents, but we will still be fracked, and we will all be dealing with the consequences. I appreciate your invitation, Mayor Bagley, to meet with the Longmont protectors to discuss the Climate Bill of Rights, with which we'd like to amend our city charter. Almost 60% of Longmont voters voted against fracking in 2012. And this was before many of the hundreds of currently available scientific studies were published warning us of the health dangers. Do you want Longmont to become another Erie, more serene on the surface perhaps, but with similar health issues that are becoming more prevalent there? You may have heard about the mom in Erie, a scientist with a doctorate in pharmacology and neuroscience, who recently had her 6-year-old son tested for benzene and ethylbenzene. She just wanted a baseline for his exposure so that she could use this to detect any elevated levels in the future. The results showed her son is in the 85th percentile for these cancer-causing chemicals. In her own words, what I was unprepared for was seeing how high his baseline level is right now. I'm a scientist who wants to be thoughtful about this, and I'm a mom who's really trying hard not to panic over these blood level results. If it isn't the proximity of 158 wells within a 1-mile radius of my home and my son's school, then where would you say this level of exposure to this environmental carcinogen is coming from? Where? Even going subsurface doesn't eliminate the very real dangers of fracking. Like cancer, prevention is so much more effective than treatment with its toxicity and mortality. Passing this ordinance tonight makes it even more necessary to pass a climate bill of rights.
Thank you for your participation in this topic. All right, let's go ahead and move on. All right, Craig Kuhn. If you could, and as you come up, if you could state your name and address, that'd be great.
Craig Kuhn, 1812 East 4th Avenue, Longmont. Gun safety is why I'm here. I am here to protect the Colorado Constitution and the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, in particular the Second Amendment. We are all law-abiding citizens. Problems have arisen with people that have broken the law and endangered people. Sadly, people will resort to any measure, stealing, driving trucks into crowds laden with bombs, making pipe bombs, making Molotov cocktails. Drugs and mental issues contribute to the problems. Do not take away our Second Amendment rights because of other people going off the deep end. Other solutions include, as far as school safety, 1 point of entry, a metal detector.
Can you hold on a second, sir?
Yes.
I'm gonna ask that some people are making motions. Don't make motions because it's hard. And the reason is if you were to talk and somebody else were saying something that you don't like, I'm going to say the same thing because I want everybody with an opinion that's different. I think we all want everybody to be heard. So if you could reset his time, please. Great. Thank you. Continue,
Okay.
sir.
School safety. Let's try this. 1 point of entry with a metal detector and possibly armed security guards. These go a long way in safeguarding schools. Walk into any federal building or bank as an example. Personally, I own a .45 for protection. That is locked in a gun safe for everybody's protection. Consider that Boulder County is currently being sued to the tune of $9 million at taxpayer expense. Do not throw away Second Amendment rights from law-abiding citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Pete Stouter. And let's also don't clap. That's all right.
I'm Pete Stouter. I live at 1103 East 4th Avenue. Interesting week last week in Boulder. Let's just put it this way. They took the rights of the people and ignored them and went right to making their own laws. Undemocratic. That's not a democracy. We're here in Longmont because we're concerned because that's going to fade or bleed into Longmont. So we're here tonight and every other night to just educate and learn and just make a presence. This is our rights. Boulder City Council member not only took the democracy and ripped it away from the community, but they also broke several laws, a lot of laws. The Colorado State Constitution, the United States Constitution. I suggest the Longmont City step back. The council watch what goes on in Boulder for a while. Learn from it. Study the laws and learn from costly mistakes that the People's Republic of Boulder made. Right now, analysts are figuring out about $1 million per taxpayer money per counselor. So there's about $9 million in lawsuits that's going to be taken on within several months. Probably $10 million with Tom Carr. He's got his work cut out for him. So let's talk about human violence instead of replacing it with gun violence. I don't like that word, gun violence, because I got guns. Everybody's got guns over here, and I don't think those are going to grow legs and go shoot people. It's human violence. That's what we're talking about, mental health, psychotropic drugs that these kids and these adults have to go get a weapon, a gun, a knife, a rental truck, which mowed down mothers and babies in Canada just about 2 months ago. Let's ban rental trucks. A couple other things, I know there's groups that want gun safety. I get it. We want gun safety too. There are plenty of organizations out there that these groups behind me that are funded by Mayor Bloomberg would like to join. We have gun clubs, we have hunter safety, we have all sorts of courses and all sorts of programs that these people can invest their time in instead of creating a new group. Because I don't think they're going to teach about guns. They're going to teach you on how to remove your Second Amendment rights. So let's just wait, let's watch, see what happens in Boulder, because they're in for a run. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stouter. I assume this is your wife, Gwen? Well, Gwen Stouter, you're up. And Sandy, it is super hot in here. I don't know if it's the topic.
Yeah,
or
can we get some airflow going up in here?
We got a lot of bodies in here, and I'm going to start taking off ties and jackets. Is there a way to get this place cooled off a little bit? Cool. Awesome. Ms. Stouter,
Hi.
go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Gwen Stouter. I'm 1103 East 4th Avenue here in Longmont. I spoke in front of the Boulder City Council last week, and, I have to just commend what this council had to say earlier. Wasn't sure where you stood. And I will tell you that it feels good to know that you're a little bit more level-headed than Boulder City Council. So, what I told them was people fear what they do not understand, and most do not understand firearms. I think that for people like those that are a part of groups like Mom Demand Action, they don't understand firearms. All they understand is what they're seeing in mainstream media and the violence between these people who have mental health issues and getting their hands on a weapon and going and committing a crime. The issue at hand here, like my husband said, is not so much the guns, it's definitely a mental health issue. Nobody's talking about this in great regards. They're simply talking about removing the rights of the majority of legal gun owners, such as myself, such as my husband, such as 50 other people in this group, amongst millions of others in this country. So it makes no sense to sit there and bow down to the minority and make the majority criminals. So, it blows my mind because 11 kids a day die due to texting and driving, yet car manufacturers not held accountable, cell phone manufacturers not held accountable. Nobody is blaming the cars or the phones. They're saying the kids are the ones making those choices. They're the ones dying more than gun violence. It just kind of blows my mind. In 2016, according to the CDC, over 67,000 died due to opioid overdoses. That's over 10,000 more than died in the Vietnam War. Nobody's really putting up a stink about that, even though heroin's illegal, most drugs are illegal, yet these kids still get their hands on these drugs, people get their hands on the drugs, and they still are dying. We are going to die. People are going to die. And I'm not trying to make what's happening in these school shootings insensitive. It is. I've got a 16-year-old, and he's at Silver Creek High School. I've got a daughter who's 19, and she's in college, far away from me, and I have no control over the fact that she's that far away, and I can't protect her. My son, on the other hand, I will tell you this. He does not fear guns. He's got frickin' 3 of them stacked up on his wall. What he fears most is bullying. What he fears most is isolation amongst the kids in the schools. You want to address school violence and kids going out and shooting people, you better start there.
Thank you. Looks like we got a twofer. Charles and Marge Rundell. Do you each want to take a shot, or you want to come up together? I assume it's one at a time, right? Just you? Okay.
My name is Charles Rundell. We live at 12484 Ute Highway in Longmont. We are in the outskirts of town, just by County Line Road 1. I concur with the lady just about 100%. We start looking at these school shootings. You look at the age group that it's doing, 15 to 19 years old. How many of these kids that took up the gun and got ready to go shoot somebody were bullied in school? I'll bet you just about most of them were. Columbine over here, those kids were dressing in the black fingernails, I forget what they call them, but they were chastised for doing that. They were bullied all the way through their high school. That was the first big shooting that we had. How many more have been done the same way? Stop and look at that. Now I'm going to address the bit of the auctions and doing background checks. I am a licensed firearms dealer. I have had a firearms license since they've been required in 1968. I probably had more firearms experience than most people in this room. I got my first gun when I was 9 years old, and I've had them since. I'm 82 now. I do firearms training for the NRA and also for the state of Colorado. It's a combative type shooting to get your concealed carry permit. I do background checks on every gun that I sell. I have had them denied and I have had them approved. The auctions, all of the auctions that I have been to do background checks, even at the auctions, we do a background check at those auctions. Some of them there is stipulations on transporting them after the auctions that I have been in contact with ATF to get those changed or get a waiver. The last time I talked to him, one of the ATF boys says, that's just the way it is. I went to another symposium and I chastised him for the answer that he gave me, for giving me such a short, curt answer. Regarding, I had a list that I was going to talk about. 3 minutes I don't. The safer, let's see, the bullying bit I covered. Most of these shootings I think have been done by the people that have been bullied through school. The thing that Boulder County did over here as far as passing the ordinance that they did.
I hate to cut you off, sir, because you're experienced, you're wise, and I love what you're saying, but I'm going to have to ask you to sit down because the 3 minutes is up.
Okay, I'll be around here when this is all over.
Right, thank you, sir.
I got some things to say.
Great, thank you, sir. Is it Marlena Tooley? Yes. All right.
Close enough.
Score one for me for close enough.
My name is Marlena Tui. I live at 703 South Pratt Parkway. This has absolutely nothing to do with my home address, but it does have to do where I work. I feel a little bit like a duck out of water because it has nothing to do with gas, oil, or guns. Take a break.
Trust me. Welcome. Welcome.
Okay. We opened our business 14 months ago over on the east side of town. Has grown tremendously, all the different businesses over there. However, the city will not allow us to put any signage out on 3rd Avenue. Nobody knows we're back there. I have spent thousands of dollars through my business and personal to advertise, Not everybody reads the paper. Not everybody works the computer. Not everybody looks at the bus stop signs, for which are super expensive. I still have people, if I'd have at least 5 people that walk in my store every day that say, "We thought you went out of business. We couldn't find you." All I'm asking is that they call them monument signs. Back where I am is right behind the Dodge dealership. Tables to teacups, indoor flea market. If we could have a monument sign, all the businesses back there would participate, putting it out on 3rd Avenue so people would know where we at. We lose hundreds of thousands of dollars constantly because nobody knows anybody's back there unless they go to UPS. Somehow everybody knows where UPS is. So all I'm asking is, because you're working on the redevelopment of property right now, that this is a consideration on your behalf to let us have, we don't want tacky things, we want something nice that people are going to come and see. We would all get together, we would help pay for it, whatever it takes, just to have a monument station out by either the front of Dodge or Ford or across the street from them. We don't care where, as long as they know where we are.
And what was your name? What was the name? No, what was the name again?
Tables to Teacups.
And where was it located? Just
right behind the Prestige Dodge dealership.
I didn't hear you. One more time?
3rd and Alpine, one block south.
All right.
But we need signs.
Your store's awesome. I'm there all the time. I know
Thank
exactly where
you.
you are. All right, Georgetta Johnston.
Good evening, and I'm not going to talk on that either. And thank you for letting me talk. And Georgetta Johnston at 320 Homestead Parkway. So what I'm doing is the paper that came out about Sarah that I'm unhappy about. She has helped this, been on the council. Some of you know I've been coming for like 2 years, I suppose. Talking about housing and all kinds of things. We want a good city to live in, and I think this is unfair that you're trying to charge her that when I'm sure others have made not good choices. I like you, Brian. You did a good job. She would have done a good job, and so would Roger have done a good job. So I'm praying and I'm believing that you're not going to. She's done wonderful things. Wonderful things. And I know different ones of you, Bonnie, Brian, Polly. Some of you don't know me. Most of you do, and I think that's unfair. So I think you need to think that through and be careful, because when somebody does and stands for good and helps this city, then I don't feel that's fair. So Lord bless you, and thank you for listening to me, and I hope something will be done about this.
Thanks, Georgetta. James Johnston? No?
No, go ahead.
All right. Just so you know, we voted a while back that we're not collecting on that. So we still need to fix it, but she's safe, I guess is my point. Lance Psycho. And then just real quick, are there families here with small children that have school in the morning? And are you on the list? You're not on the list? Okay. If somebody has a kid, small kid, and they need to get to school, raise your hand. And all right. Guess not. You're here for the long haul. Sorry. Mr. Psycho.
That's the real name. Good evening, Council. Lance Psycho, 12755 Strawberry Circle, Longmont, Colorado. I'm here tonight to urge the City Council of Longmont to refrain from considering any motion that would push for gun control within city limits following the lead of Boulder. When I moved to Colorado 10 years ago, I chose to live in Longmont instead of Boulder because sanity still existed in this city. I own a prominent business in town and own and develop real estate here, which adds to your tax base. I also build the community through my volunteerism, and all 4 of my children attend public schools here in Longmont. I'm also a law-abiding gun owner that often carries them to defend myself and my family on a routine basis. Many of the people behind me We're at the city council meetings in Boulder, and despite us continually laying out the facts behind gun violence and the lack of it in Boulder, we were met with deaf ears, and they passed the ordinance unanimously. It's probably because their city council is 100% weighted to the left politically, but that's not the case here. We have a mixed council of Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, much like our voter and population base. We do not need to be like Boulder. We're Longmont. You are all Longmont, and we are different from Boulder, and I believe that is a good thing. Why aren't we talking about the mental health issues? Why aren't we talking about the overprescription of mood-altering drugs on our children? Why aren't we talking about gun-free zones? Why are we not talking about firearm training, school safety, and at-risk monitoring? Why are we not educating ourselves about weapons, what makes them different, and the facts? Why aren't we having an honest discussion? Less than 24 hours after Boulder passed their gun ban ordinance, a 4-pronged lawsuit was filed against each member of their city council and their police department on behalf of a citizen, 2 businesses, and even a student attending CU Boulder. Don't be like Boulder. Longmont doesn't need to waste time and taxpayer money in a lawsuit. You were elected to make, you were not elected to make your law-abiding citizens into criminals. There are better things to do as elected officials. I don't have the answer for school shootings, but I do know that motioning for and passing a ban like Boulder's here in Longmont is not the answer. All that ban has done is divide us further politically, make law-abiding citizens into instant criminals, and simplified an over-complex problem without addressing its complexity. Don't be like Boulder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Psycho. Jessica Blevins.
Jessica Blevins, actually in Meade, but I work here in Longmont, have for 10 years. I was going to talk about how the proclamation was, in short, I feel like a step towards negativity, and it's kind of a moot point now, but other than that, I'm here to support my Second Amendment rights, and I'm happy to see where the city is and that you're not going to do stuff like what Boulder has done. And I'm going to take your advice and make a proclamation myself and send it in. So thank you. That's all I have.
Look forward to it. All right, Patrick McClintock.
Good evening, Council. I'm Patrick McClintock, 1678 Judson Drive here in Longmont. Tonight, I'm going to take you on a brief visual journey. Imagine, if you will, you're in Africa, standing in a grassland of the savannah. Before you is an endless sea of golden grass. To your left, you notice a gazelle, tail wagging, happily gazing. Something catches your eye from the right. You see a leopard, hunched, prowling through the grass, moving swift but quietly, stalking its prey. The gazelle lifts its head, looking towards the direction of the leopard, thinking it may have heard something. As you look closer at the gazelle's head, you notice something strange. You notice that its antlers were forcefully sawed off. The leopard dives out of the grass, claws extended, mouth open. The gazelle tries to run but is unable. It tries to fight as the leopard attempts to latch on, using its head in defense. But it is no use, because its tools for self-defense, its antlers, were removed. The gazelle, unable to defend itself from the leopard, is eventually overtaken. Now we are in an alley, in a city. It's night. It's fairly dark except for the light from the full moon. You hear movement from the right as a young woman walks along the wet concrete. She just got done texting her friend, so she puts the phone back in her purse. You notice a dark figure behind her. A large shadowy figure. In his hand, a knife. You see him moving swiftly and quietly, stalking the young woman. The figure quickly catches up to her, grabs her arm. The woman, startled, fights back and hits the man in the face, giving her space to start running for her life. She begins moving as quickly as she can, screaming for help and scrambling in her purse for her cell phone to call the police. The woman is a law-abiding citizen, and because this city outlawed the possession of firearms, she is unable to defend herself from the predator. Because her tools for self-defense were removed, the shadowy figure caught up to her, and she was overtaken. I ask you, Council, how does it make sense to remove the antlers from a gazelle, rendering it virtually helpless from a predator? How does it make sense to remove the tools for self-defense for a human, rendering them virtually helpless from a predator? Council, you don't see nature removing any creature's ability to defend itself. So why are people trying to take away a human being's ability to defend itself? Not only is it a violation of the Constitution, but I would safely say it's against the laws of nature. It was Robert A. Heinlein who said an armed society is a polite society. Manners are good when one may have to back up his act with his life. Council, we call on you tonight to step up when Moms Demand Action and similar organizations come to you, demanding gun control similar to Boulder. We ask that you politely remind them that the inalienable right to keep and bear arms is necessary for protection from evil, as well as necessary for protection against a tyrannical government, and under no circumstance shall this right ever be infringed. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean McBride?
Hello, Longmont City Council. My name is Sean McBride. I come to you as a concerned citizen from Loveland. I live up at 1719 Cattail Drive. And I'm also a U.S. Army veteran. And when I see these kind of proponents that are going on in Boulder right now, it's quite scary. History is repeating itself. So I ask you, City Council, look at history. See what has happened in the past and don't repeat those mistakes. Are we going to repeat the same mistakes that the Weimar Republic did as the Nazis rose to power and then disarmed their whole nation, put them in concentration camps and killed them because they had no ways to resist? Or, as the left like to say, what about the Democratic Socialists? Democrat Socialists have killed more than the Nazis. Stalin and Lenin were Democrat Socialists. They rounded up their political opponents and killed them en masse, just because they spoke out against them. What about Mao in China? He killed over 60 million of his people in his so-called Cultural Revolution. Pol Pot, or the Kim Jong-un family in North Korea. This is America. I served my country and I swore an oath. My oath was to protect the U.S. Constitution and the people of America against enemies, both foreign and domestic. That oath never expires. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your service, sir. I'm going to slaughter this one. Bob Nibjor? Nybor. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, I know I do. I just couldn't read it. I know. I can remember Bob, though. Bob, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Bob Nybor. I live at 4050 Arezzo Drive here in Longmont. I've lived in Longmont since 1993 and have been a citizen of Colorado since 1987. With that, I've always enjoyed the mountains, the recreation that we have here. I love Longmont for all the services it provides, and it's a safe place to live. But for me, that wasn't always so, and I'm going to talk about gun violence because I'm a victim of it. I grew up in Illinois, and guns were pretty prevalent in my family. On Christmas Eve, 1965, I was at a family gathering when a relative pointed a rifle at me, and I just said to him, "Don't point," bang, right in my right arm. Had a quick trip to the emergency room, got a tetanus shot, went back home. My father, and I'm sharing this, it's the first time I've shared this with anyone, my father was a World War II veteran and was injured during the war. I don't know what ghost haunted him, but he had firearms, and he terrorized my family and I for the entire 18 years that I lived there. If he came home drunk, he pulled the gun on us. Sometimes he threatened to kill us with it. I don't know why he didn't. So for me, it's a very personal issue. That said, for 22 years, I worked for the city of Longmont. I was a supervisor here on the second floor of a facility, and I dealt with the public day in and day out. Most of the time, 95% of the time, my interactions with those folks were very positive. I enjoyed it. Once in a while, as a supervisor up there, I was called out and had to deal with people who weren't using the facility as what it was intended for. Sometimes when I talked to them, I could reason with them and settle the issue. Sometimes I had to evict them. Never once did I have a gun. Some of those folks were pretty scary. They really were. But I knew if I needed extra help, the police were right down the street. So I don't feel like you need a gun to protect yourself. I don't know what that fear is all about. I really don't. I don't have a gun, nor would I ever want one. If somebody wants to take my life with a gun, I suppose they will. But I'm not afraid of it. And I feel like Longmont is a place where you don't have to be afraid.
Thank you, Mr. Nybor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Jason Boros?
Here for the short people, you know. So, council, thanks for hearing me. I didn't really prepare a statement. Mayor Pro Temp, I was listening to things you said, and one thing that caught my ear was the conflation of, trying to separate two groups of one being for pro-gun safety and the other just being pro-gun. What I'd like to point out is that everyone here that is a gun owner is for gun safety. We all want safety, public safety, school safety. I have a daughter in school, and I want her to be safe. I want the children of Moms Demand Action to be safe. But we need to focus on what the real issue. Why are our kids killing each other? It's not guns. We've always had guns in this country. Kids used to take their guns to school in this country and didn't shoot each other. What changed? It wasn't the guns. It's the people. It's our society. It's how our kids are raised. So when a child gets bullied and continues to get bullied at school, and that situation continues to get ignored, and you create a powder keg, and it doesn't get addressed, you're going to have a problem on your hands, especially in our current society that just, we have kids that have enjoy celebrity culture. And when a child goes and shoots a school, the media immediately puts it out and glorifies this child. Their name is all over the place, and the next kid who's upset, having a problem, wants to go out and do the same thing, but even worse. That's not the guns. That's us. And that's something that we as a society need to address. And we need to have these conversations, and I would love to sit down and have these conversations. We tried to have that conversation in Boulder. I was part of that conversation, and it was shut down. And it was shut down because certain special interest groups didn't want to have that conversation. They wanted a ban. They didn't want to address the fundamental issues that are causing the violence in our schools that we're seeing. And they wanted to rack a notch on their belt and say, we got a ban pushed through. And it got the city of Boulder sued. And it's going to have no net effect on public safety. It's not going to protect one single life, as they like to say. If we wanted to make it about saving just one life, we would address the things that actually are public safety issues. Such as other people brought up opiate abuse. You're more likely to die in a car accident than you are to suffer from gun violence in Boulder County by a huge margin. Those are the real issues that this council should be looking at, not necessarily non-issues such as the gun violence that doesn't happen in Boulder County. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Linda Schlacke? Got to be careful who you sit next to, Linda. Just kidding, Strider.
Linda Schlacke, 2307 Sherry Marsh Street. Thank you so much, Polly Christensen, for presenting some good facts to us. I would like to add, in addition to the 1,000 people that marched for the March for Life, there were many of us among the thousands in Denver that were marching to hopefully make a difference on the state level. I would also like to add that assault rifles were illegal in the United States from 1995 to 2005, and mass shootings dropped by 37%. That's a lot of lives, folks. Another thing I would like to add is guns are the third leading cause of the deaths of children in our nation. That is shameful. Assault rifles were designed as weapons of war for soldiers. They were not designed for average citizens to be toting around our streets. And military people who have seen the effects of those on real people are not excited about average citizens. As a mother, a grandmother, a teacher who still volunteers in our local schools, I would ask you to ban assault weapons, magazines, bump stocks. They are not needed for hunting. My son-in-law is a very successful hunter who provides meat for his family, and he has never needed those things. There is discussion about arming teachers. I recently heard a widow of a fallen police officer in Colorado talk about how the guy he was chasing grabbed his gun and shot him to death. This is a man that's been trained in guns. This is my concern. I mean, teachers have not signed up for that. They have enough on their plate. But we need to realize these are dangerous weapons. They're not toys or meant to be toys. And we need to do something on the grassroots level because a lot of people in Congress have been bought off. I'm sorry, that's the reality. And so we have to start somewhere. And Boulder started in the right place. They started at the local level. We've got to do something. It's just shameful what's going on. We have to be realistic. I'm not saying take guns away from everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. And a good example of, look at that, lots to say and cut it right off. All right, Grady. Mary Buchanan?
Hi, my name is Mary Buchanan. I live at 910 West 8th Street in Loveland, Colorado. I guess I just wanted to address some things that other people have said. I don't think most of us think that guns are toys. We know that they are a tool that you have to have a massive level of respect for. Guess I'll just start. I am a law-abiding citizen, the type of person that restrictions to the Second Amendment would affect. Murderers and other criminals do not follow laws. It is, after all, what categorizes them as such. I guess the most protected society, i.e. prison, is a good example. They have shanks. Take away the guns, they'll find something to kill each other with. In nature, predators often think twice when their prey is armed. The same applies to humans, and I would hope that anyone who thinks otherwise would reevaluate that kind of rationale. I heard before somebody say we shouldn't have to walk around afraid or needing guns. And I'm going to say, as I have fallen victim to domestic violence and rape, and now that I'm a gun owner, I'm not afraid anymore. And I'll be damned if that ever happens to me again. I am a disabled single mother, and I do anything to keep my daughter safe and myself safe for her sake. A society grows best when old men plant seeds of trees whose shade they will never sit in. That is a Greek proverb that resonates with me. I was going to say, we are so fortunate as Americans to live in a country whose founders fought and thought to prevent future generations from enduring the very tyranny which drove them to seek the freedoms we have today. Thus, the Bill of Rights was born. This document was created not to grant people freedoms, but to protect them from those that would choose comfort over liberty for not only them, but for everyone else. I, as a concerned citizen whose life is affected by the actions of my neighbors, urge you, councilmen, in the age of emotions, driving legislation to remember the oath you swore to protect the Constitution of the United States of America and of the state of Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buchanan. I was going to say Andrew Owner, but no, it's O'Connor, right? All right. Score one for me.
Good afternoon, Mayor Bagley and City Council. I'm Andrew J. O'Connor. I have a 9-year-old daughter who attends Boulder County schools, and I'm married. And I'm here to stand up for women and children. This is an issue that concerns the health, safety, and welfare of the community. I commend Councilwoman Christensen. Only 4% of mentally ill people commit violence. I've been hearing this thrown around a lot. These are lies. I see the same racist white supremacists here that I saw at the Boulder City Council. They lost at the Boulder City Council, and they will lose here. This lawsuit will be dismissed. I'm a former public defender and drug court attorney in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and from back east. I reviewed the lawsuit. It is frivolous, it is meritless, and they will be ending up paying attorney's fees and costs to the Boulder City Council. Gun rights are about keeping white men on top. It shouldn't surprise anyone here that mass shootings have increased as minorities and women strive for equality. Gun violence is rooted in white supremacy. There is no natural right to own a lethal weapon. When white men feel disempowered, they resort to violence to reassert their sense of authority. Former Chief Justice Warren Burger said, "If I were writing the Bill of Rights now, there wouldn't be any such thing as the Second Amendment." The right of people to bear guns has been the subject of one of the greatest pieces of fraud, I repeat the word fraud, on the American public by special interest groups that I've ever seen in my lifetime. That's Jeff Justice Warren. Please remember that these racist white men justify and excuse the slaughter of school children, our children, and they are simply cowards at heart. White men with guns are the problem. Please do what Boulder just did and pass an assault weapons ban. And in fact, I would urge you to do one better than Boulder and ban all guns. This is a public safety issue, and you can do good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gary Spencer. And by way of education, that was the right way to do it. Address the dais, say your words, don't disturb, and just go ahead.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the time. I'm Gary Spencer from 734 Sandpoint Drive. I realize there was a somewhat of a consensus that this is a squirrel topic, but I'm still going to voice my concerns. I'm here today to voice the concern that the City Council may entertain legislation similar to the Boulder assault weapon ban, a ban which is already in direct violation of the Second Amendment, the state constitution under Article 2, subsection 13, and Colorado Revised Statute 29, subsection 11.7-103. And it is facing justified opposition in the courts. I urge the council to oppose all similar legislation. Assault weapons is a fabricated term, as are the definitions the Boulder City Council put behind it. Adopting this type of legislation would be disingenuous and disrespectful to the intelligence of law-abiding citizens of this city, this state, and this great nation. You would be failing your constituents if you ignored the statistical realities that defensive uses of firearms far outnumbers any violence numbers that are cited by orders of magnitude. Statistics around mass shootings show that most of these weapons are already illegally obtained. The statistics also show that these so-called assault weapons aren't even the weapons being involved in these crimes. Statistics also show that a woman who uses a gun against an attempted rape is 500 times less likely to be raped. Also, most school shootings happen in gun-free zones. And the most obvious fact is that crazies and criminals don't follow the law. The defense of ourselves, our families, and our communities from threats, foreign and domestic, is a liberty and a responsibility that I agree with many Americans, including the Founding Fathers, is a natural right as natural as free thought and speech. And it's crucial to maintaining a polite and free society. Adding restrictions to inalienable rights only leads to those rights being abused by the privileged and the deranged. I would also like to add that the 1998 to 2005 assault rifle, it's really assault weapons ban, was ineffective. And the only reason that 37% stat exists is because the lens through which the stats were looked through was skewed to 6 killings, or 6 people murdered per shooting, instead of 4, which was the industry standard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Dan Twing?
Hi, I'm Dan Twing. I live at 4259 Prairie Fire Circle. 4259 Prairie Fire Circle in Longmont. I've been a resident of Longmont since 1999. I'm also a law-abiding gun owner. And while I had some prepared statements here, I think I'm going to shorten my time. A lot has been said. Just address a couple of things. First of all, I really appreciate Councilmember Waters saying, vision for the future. And I really applaud Moms Demand Action for wanting action. I don't understand why they choose to focus on the wrong thing when they could focus on actions that could actually make a difference. And so my vision for the future, throwing education that isn't going to educate anybody away, is that we actually teach kids how to deal with stresses and how to treat each other better. I think about sex education in schools, and in some cases, it's a little shocking, some of the things that we talk to kids about at the ages that we talk to them about. I would encourage Moms Demand Action to focus their efforts there, where we teach kids earlier what can happen if they don't treat each other well. And put your efforts where action will actually make a difference. Guards at schools, hardening the targets. One thing that I don't know if council has this ability to increase the number of school resource officers or funding for that. I know it's probably a district issue. It's also a police issue. But there are things that could be done that would make a difference immediately. And I don't see anybody focusing, and some of these special interest groups, on those kinds of ideas. They go straight to Bloomberg's issue and his funding and none of the others. I would also just like to say on the statement of assault weapons, and the term was used assault rifle earlier, if you really took the time to understand how these devices work, there isn't a significant difference between what you think of as an AR-15 and many other weapons that you might, just because of how they look, not think they are dangerous. So another place to take action is to get educated on some of these things, because the devices, to make laws about devices you don't understand is really dangerous. And I think when you look to make laws on oil and gas, you get oil and gas experts and you try to educate yourselves. But I see a lot of bodies, legislative bodies, making laws before they understand the issues. So another area that you could demand action is education. And I think that looking to some of these other topics is really where the energies could be put, instead of constantly attacking a device, a tool for self-defense that has been the founding principle of this country. And with that, I'll finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Strider Benston.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Strider Benston, 951 West 17th. Maximalism. What avails a man if he gain the whole world, yet lose his own soul? What avails an oil baron if he sell the last drop, frack the last rock, strut his gilded frock? If he poison the rivers, the ocean, the air, melt the ice caps, and leave an endless summer for the roaches and lichens to live on? What avails a fractivist to demand perfection while 2,000 new wells spring up down the street? If we neither know nor respect nor employ the democratic process, then those who worship firepower and or dictatorship start off with a distinct advantage. Our Niwot Supreme Court Justice, whose claim to fame and honor is that he voted that an 18-year truck driver only had a right to his job if he voluntarily froze to death in his broken down truck at 14 below zero. Neil Gorsuch just voted to eliminate the rights of contract workers yesterday. Our new National Security Advisor, John Bolton, who has advocated every possible war, may get his war on Iran this year, with guaranteed millions dead, including our children and our grandchildren, guns or no guns. Democracy was invented to learn facts, hear opinions, and seek common solutions. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was incomplete. Did we throw it out because it was incomplete? We had to march again in Selma. I did so. The democratic process took 5 more months for the right to vote to become law, which is now being stolen. Maximalism does not build community, it builds chaos. We will not survive if we rule by chaos, guns or no guns.
Thank you, Mr. Benston. Tim Starr?
Hello, I'm Tim Starr. I have lived in Longmont for 6 years now at 1772 Sunlight Drive. One of the main reasons I moved here to Colorado from California is so I could get a carry permit, which I did as soon as I could. I assure you, where I came from back in California, which has the highest rating from all the gun control groups in the country, virtually no one can get a carry permit, and a lot more gun restrictions are in place than I think the people who say they're not interested in scrapping the Second Amendment are willing to admit. But if you look at what they do in practice, they go as far as they possibly can. For instance, the law in Washington, D.C. that was struck down in the Heller decision literally made it illegal for a guy who worked as an armed security guard during the day to have a functional gun in his home at night. That's the kind of thing that they push under the name of gun violence prevention or gun safety. Sorry, I'm a lot more nervous than I thought I would be.
You're doing great.
I've known a lot of people throughout my life who have needed to use a gun for self-defense. Fortunately, I have never been one of them. But one of the reasons I believe in the right of self-defense is because I am also a survivor of family violence in my family. My father was abusive to myself, my sister, my mother, and I don't think he would have been as likely to do that and get away with it if he had known that there would be more serious consequences for doing so. And that was also a situation where not only were the police not able to protect us, but they were legally not allowed to. We were under a court-ordered visitation. We had to go visit him. He threatened to call the cops to have us brought to his house if we tried to stay away from him. I guess the other story that I want to tell here is about a friend of mine who was working on a political campaign in California in 1980. When he and another friend of mine left the campaign office one night, they were followed by a street gang that started to threaten them. And the only reason they left them alone is one of my friends pulled a gun, scared him off. He then later moved to Washington, D.C., and became one of the plaintiffs in what became the Heller decision. His name is Tom Palmer. He's also a gay man, a founder of the Pink Pistols there. I had another friend in the Pink Pistols in San Francisco who told me he always carried a gun everywhere he went because every gay person he's ever known, or lesbian, or whatever variety you can come up with, all of them have been physically assaulted for their sexuality.
Thank you,
So,
Mr. Starr.
Thank you.
Marisa Dirks.
Good evening. I'm Marisa Dirks. I live at 12874 North 95th Street. I'm not going to make judgments about the folks who are here tonight speaking in favor of the Second Amendment. I will always try to have reasonable discussions with folks that I suspect don't agree on the why of any argument, because chances are they are my neighbors. We are all connected, but we do have to ask ourselves, what are we motivated by? And are our concerns fear-based? In my experience, because I'm not that young, is that whatever decision I make in life, if it is based on fear, it never, ever works. Instead, if you are motivated by connection, and dare I say it, love for your neighbor, it always works out in the end. There seems to be two levels of fear here at work. One, that Longmont somehow will turn into another, quote, People's Republic of Boulder. I grew up in Longmont. I like Boulder, but I love Longmont. Longmont has its own identity, its own vibrant and common sense community. I have friends who live in Boulder who envy, for instance, our owning our own utility. Next Light is a shining example of not having to be a slave to Comcast. We're still small enough that you can call about your City of Longmont bill and talk to someone you probably went to high school with, not customer service in another state or country. The next level of fear is of losing your Second Amendment rights. The Second Amendment hasn't been amended, it's not going anywhere, and it's certainly not going to be made more secure by screaming at someone else who cares about gun safety more than the Second Amendment. Gun safety advocates are not motivated by imagined fear. Through all of the emotion, ultimately, they are driven by common sense. My observation is that the NRA is doing its job here, fueled rhetoric that makes people scared. Having grown up here, I remember going to school with kids who went hunting with their fathers on the weekends. My dad served. Our family understood early on the sobering power of a firearm. And this was also when the NRA was strictly, and it seemed to me, only about gun safety. Another thing that's changed is that back then, families who lost loved ones were offered compassion and an ear. They were not vilified. So we have a choice here about what we trust. I choose to make the distinction between what is imagined and what I know, who is my neighbor, even if I don't know them personally, or even if I know they disagree with me. I choose to trust my neighbors in Longmont to continue a reasonable and common sense conversation led by connection and working together, not by fear. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Dirks. Marianne Riggy. And no air conditioning. Air conditioning is not going to happen. No mayoral proclamation I could do. I hereby say, let's.
They're working on it.
Okay.
They think it may have been hit by lightning.
Oh. Whoa. All right. Looks like Kimber Governson. Well, do you want to? Well, if you want to wait till the. You want to wait until the. You're the last one, so you can either go now or wait a few more minutes until we talk about that topic. You're all right. Great. All right, that concludes our public invited to be heard. Let's go ahead. You guys want to keep powering through? Let's keep powering through. Thank you, everybody, for your conduct and good decorum, the way everybody on both sides of the issue presented your opinions tonight. Let's go ahead and read the consent agenda and introduction and reading by title of first reading of the ordinances.
Mayor Bagley, first item 8A is ordinance 2018-25, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Brand Municipal Airport Hangar Parcel H28E to Aerosphere Incorporated. Public hearing and second reading scheduled for June 12th. Item 8B is resolution 2018-54, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the city of Boulder for a cost share agreement for the use of downloadable digital media. Item 8C is Resolution 2018-55, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Colorado Department of Transportation for grant funding for the 2018 Click It or Ticket campaign. Item 8D is Resolution 2018-56, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Colorado Department of Transportation for grant funding for high-visibility impaired driving enforcement. Item 8E is Resolution 2018-57, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Colorado Department of Labor and Employment Division of Vocational Rehabilitation for paid work experience agreements from May 2018 through May 2019. Item 8F is Resolution 2018-58, expressing the intent of the city to be reimbursed for certain expenses relating to certain capital expenditures associated with the financing of the acquisition of open space. Item 8G is approved memorandum of understanding between the city and the National Recreation and Park Association for a $25,000 grant for the summer meals program. Item 8H is approve and authorize submission of grant application to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration for mental health awareness training. Item 8I is approve one capital improvement program amendment, and item 8J is Resolution 2018-59, authorizing loans from the fund balance in the city's fleet fund to the DDA Construction Fund and the DDA Arts and Entertainment Fund, providing for repayment of the loans from the DDA Tax Increment Fund. And staff does not have a need to pull any of these items.
All right, thank you, Valerie. Do any council members want to pull any of these items? If not, can we have a motion, please? Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I move the consent agenda.
It's been moved and seconded. No further discussion. Let's vote.
Hang on just a second. I got to find it.
Oh, and we let the record reflect that we're welcoming back Councilmember Peck. Welcome, welcome.
I don't think I'm going to have to restart the vote. Oh, just a second. I'm trying to do two things here. Sorry. I do not have her signed in, so she does not show up.
That's all right. Okay. Do you want to? Can you flash the voting results?
Oh, didn't I? Okay, I'm
No.
sorry. Oh, sorry.
I was going to ask.
I can't.
Oh, do we change the software?
No, I messed up.
Oh, okay.
I got
Well,
people talking in my
that
ear.
passes unanimously.
Can't do it.
All right, ordinances on second reading and public hearings. The first is 9A, ordinance 2018-22, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the city of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2018. Is there a staff report from is there a staff report? All right, are there any questions, comments from council? Seeing none, let's go ahead and open open this for public hearing on ordinance 2018-22. Anybody want to speak? All right, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. Can I have a motion, please? I would move ordinance 2018-22. I'm sorry, I did it anyway. I didn't see anybody in the queue until it popped up. Great. No further discussion? Let's vote. That passes unanimously. All right. Not the what? Oh, I know. Were you on there or no? Did you?
No, she's not on any.
All right, Councilmember Peck. Did you vote? Yes. Passes unanimously with Councilmember Peck. All right, ordinance B, or 9B, ordinance 2018-23, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of drainage and utility easements generally located on Lot 1, Block 2, Harvest Junction North, Replat B subdivision. Are there any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Martin. Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and open this up for public hearing. Would anyone like to say anything? All right, seeing none. Anything else from the council? All right, let's go ahead and close the public hearing and discussion. Councilmember Martin.
I can't hear you.
All right, Councilmember moved ordinance 2018-23. Do you have a second? All right, let's vote. All right, great. Okay, now, time we waited for, 9C, ordinance 2018-24. This is a bill for an ordinance approving the site relinquishment and lease agreement between the city, Cub Creek Energy LLC, CCW Energy LLC, and Top Operating Company authorizing the City of Longmont to lease the mineral estate of the real property known as the Hartman, Herner, and French properties, also known as the premises, to Cub Creek Energy LLC, the tenant, and approving the revocable permit and agreement between the city and Cub Creek Energy LLC for an access road. Are there any questions? First of all, is there a staff report?
Mayor, Council, we presented the full we gave a full presentation on the first reading and then also did it again at the public forum, so we weren't going to present the same information this time. If council wants, would be happy to do that or answer any questions.
I don't see anybody in the queue at this point, so just on behalf of the council, thank you very much for everybody for your work on this and for telling us and sharing that information. Are there any questions or comments from council? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 2018-24. Let's go ahead and start with you, Mr. Stump.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley and council members. My name is Tom Stumpf of 2863 Humboldt Circle here in Longmont. Thomas Jefferson, Elizabeth Cody Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, Rosa Parks, Rachel Carson. Each one of these persons was closely involved in the development of a groundswell movement. The American Revolution, the abolitionist movement, suffragette movement, civil rights movement, the environmental movement. But they are only samples of many other historical movements which have evolved from the bottom up, not from the top down. They are clearly illustrative of how individuals can profoundly change society, regardless of laws, whether federal, state, or local. We need not necessarily be shackled by state laws just because they are there, as has been proclaimed in this chamber recently. That's why we, the Longmont Protectors, are promoting the Climate Bill of Rights, regardless of what the current laws state. Those laws might, in fact, be still legal, but whether they are moral is certainly highly doubtful. And this is, in fact, a moral issue, notwithstanding what has likewise been declared here recently. Moral relates to principles of right and wrong, a standard of right conduct or behavior. So as far as the Climate Bill of Rights is concerned, it is a truly moral argument, given that it advocates for the most fundamental right of each one of us to a healthy, livable planet. What is happening here tonight with the site relinquishment ordinance makes it all the more clear that we need to consider and implement the Climate Bill of Rights. The proposed ordinance does not protect the climate, and it does not change any laws. Accordingly, we shall not be changing direction. We shall be resolutely moving forward, not as so-called unruly activists, but rather as individuals who care strongly and profoundly about our fundamental right to a healthy climate.
Thank you, Mr. Stump. Appreciate all your comments these last few weeks. Kimber Governson. Get you off the floor, stretch those legs.
Imagine I'll be known on a first name basis one of these weeks. My name's Kimber Governson, and I'm at 310 Judson Street. I'm here to speak on 9C as well. What I believe that we're doing here is looking for simple mental solutions to really deep structural problems, and that we're working with some pretty impossible paradigms. So here we are sleeping with snakes and hoping that somehow we're going to come out unscathed. And I believe that the industry has rendered us fools. They've rendered us cattle that are being forced to play their game, and that they have a right to the minerals that are underneath our feet. But in order to get those minerals, they have to poison our lands and our air and our water, our bodies. And we're calling this justice. And what I believe is that we need to challenge this line of total BS that we've been fed and that we are being told is inviolable law. If the purpose of law is to uphold justice, I have to ask, what justice is this? We are being told that we have absolutely no recourse and that we have no right to defend ourselves. And I believe that not only do I have a right, but I have a duty and a responsibility as a healthcare practitioner, as a mother, and as a citizen to speak. So if we can't see how totally unjust these laws are, I believe that we've been sleeping with snakes a little too long. What we're dealing with is subhuman law, law that is actually working against true justice. And I don't know how much destruction of life, disease, and devastation we will need to observe before this gets very clear, but I, for one, find it very heartbreaking that I'm going to have to find out. There's an old saying that when you play with fire, you are bound to get burned, and I believe that is the sad reality of what is happening here. I do understand the work that you all have put into this, and I do appreciate and acknowledge that. And I hear that we have arrived, that you believe you have arrived at the best possible scenario given the current law. But what I'm saying, and of course what I hope we are all seeing, is that this is precisely the problem. So I understand that we're at the end of the line with this tonight as the second reading, and what I am hoping is that this is not an end, but that this is a beginning of opening our eyes and working to create the deeper changes that will actually allow us to leave behind a world and an earth where our children and our children's children can grow and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimber. See, first name basis there. Did you see the joke? All right, Mr. Strider-Benston, you're up again. I hope you don't mind, Mr. Pedro, but saved you till the end. I figure you deserved it.
Thank you. I wouldn't figure on being so quick. Mayor Bagley and City Council and people. I tend to agree 97 or 98% of the time and on the content with my fractivist friends. Some of them are probably mad at me because I think the city did an incredibly good job of getting us the best deal that we could possibly or likely get at this particular moment in real time. And what I was talking about is the democratic process is crucial to the survival, although it has been severely corrupted by banning the right to vote, assaulting people one doesn't like when they have power in the system and all of that. But we still have to plod forward. I've often been considered and even called an extremist. Well, I will take that honor for truth, justice, beauty, dignity, love. But as far as any particular policy concerns, I understand there is always a process. If there's no process, then the only thing left is the gun or the bomb. And we will destroy the planet and ourselves if we use that, like our current president and NS advisor and Secretary of State are planning a war against somebody, probably Iran, but it might be Korea or Venezuela or Puerto Rico, they don't know. I've always really been a bridge builder, even back during the Black Power coup when the CIA took over the civil rights movement and introduced racism into the movement. And it collapsed soon thereafter because of that having happened. But I've really been a bridge builder. But when you're at war, both sides, what are the first thing they do? They blow up the bridges. So let's keep building bridges and learn to communicate with each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benston. Gordon Pedro.
Mayor, City Council, Gordon Pedro, 2639 Falcon Drive, Longmont. This ordinance that you're getting ready to approve does not give us a perfect solution. A more perfect solution was Charter Amendment 300 approved by the voters in 2012. It banned fracking and related activities with the city limits. However, the Colorado Supreme Court disagreed. And since we are a nation and state bound by laws, they prevailed. So this agreement, I believe, is the best option we have on the table. Imperfect, but better than the status quo. I encourage you to approve it, but I request that you continue to strive to remove threats posed by the oil and gas operations near our community. Specifically, I ask that you keep your focus on the threat posed by the collection line running from the stamp well through East Longmont subdivisions and within a short distance of Trail Ridge Middle School. Please don't lose your focus on this threat. We all learned in middle school geometry that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If you draw a straight line between the stamp and the Maida wells, it removes the zigzagging collection line that now passes through our neighborhoods on the east, and it also would remove a threat. So I ask that you could keep considering, if this agreement does not produce the abandonment of that collection line quickly enough, that you look at other alternatives so we can do it faster. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Pedro. All right, is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this ordinance? All right. Let's go ahead and close the public hearing. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'd like to move passage of ordinance 2018-24.
Do I have a second? Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to say something? All right, just before, go ahead. Oh, absolutely, Councilmember Peck.
Great.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you. So I voted for this ordinance when it came up on first reading because we were approached by residents that they wanted these wells out of our public lands because of the fear of what happened in Firestone. So my vote on the first ordinance was to get rid of that gathering line and to get those wells out of our public lands. But this time, tonight, because I absolutely am against fracking under Union Reservoir, I'm going to vote against it because I am voting this time against fracking. I wish I had stated a couple of weeks ago that I wish we could have divided this ordinance and had two separate votes. So my vote's null, but I'm making a statement. I absolutely do not want fracking under that reservoir. I think it is criminal, and so I won't be voting for this time.
As long as we don't have 4 people making a statement, we'll be okay. Dr. Waters.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley.
At the end of the public forum last Tuesday night, the spokesperson for East Boulder Protectors made a statement. I didn't write it down to quote it, but to paraphrase, the words were, "We or they were not interested in a win in the war against oil and gas." I can only conclude that statement was based on the perception that this is a win in the war against oil and gas. And for me, I said it last week, I'm going to say it again, I'm not going to pass on the chance to win one for Longmont. If I vote no on this, or we voted no on this, in my view, we keep our residents on the battlefield with risk of casualties that we don't have to take. And honestly, I don't know how I would answer the question to the parents of students at Trail Ridge Middle School when you had a chance to vote to increase their health and safety. Why did you pass? I don't know how I'd answer that question to teachers, to the parents of those kids, to the homeowners under whose homes were constructed over the top of that collection line. So, as Gordon said, we've all agreed, this is not a perfect solution. But if we pass, I don't know how long after the June 11th and 12th meeting of CGOCC, when they'll act on a forced pooling application, that we would see a drilling operation within several hundred feet of our swim beach, but I'm pretty certain it would be soon after. So while it's not a perfect solution, and I hate the thought of drilling under Union Reservoir, I'm not passing on the win, and I'm not going to take a position that I can't defend to children and parents and residents of this community.
Thanks, Dr. Waters. Councilmember Martin, are you, she's out of tea, people. You okay?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I find it interesting that the people who spoke this afternoon, this evening, this night, we're all asking the city to make laws which the city is not empowered to make. Not all. The people who didn't want their Second Amendment rights taken away. We're not asking the city not to take them away because they don't believe that the city has that power, and neither do I. But the city needs to do what the city can. People are drawing a false distinction between moral and legal issues when in fact what we are dealing with is neither a moral nor a legal issue. We are dealing with an issue of power. The city does not have the power to stop fracking under Union Reservoir because if it did, it would. City Council, you can, raise a little hand or something. Anybody here who would not stop fracking under Union Reservoir if you could? No, none of us would. And I was told recently and shocked by a constituent who said, "You are one of the 7 most powerful people in Longmont." Well, that isn't very powerful because we aren't powerful enough to stop fracking under Union Reservoir. In that, we are more powerful as individuals than we are as a city council. Because as individuals, we can go out and engage in civil disobedience, but as council members, acting as council members, we swore an oath not to. And for me, that's that. So I'm going to vote for this, even though I would give my right arm to stop fracking under Union Reservoir for this city.
Thanks, Councilmember. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I just want to say that I will be in favor of this ordinance because I do believe it is a good first step or a good step along the path. But that does not stop me in my stance and what will continue to be my direction, that the city be as creative as possible and continue to push at all costs possible to get fracking outside of the city and out from underneath our city property as much as we humanly and possibly can do so within certain constructs of the law. We are acting on behalf of the city at large, and as Councilmember Martin said, it's one level of appropriateness to do civil disobedience as an individual. It's a different level to ask that we represent our entire constituency in civil disobedience. But like I said, I will continue on my position to push for any creative and as well as any new legal change that comes about that we can push and push and push. This is just a step, not the final one.
Thanks, Councilmember Rodriguez. Mayor Pro Tem Christensen.
I appreciate all the comments that my fellow council members have made. And I would, to me, the most significant thing was when I asked one of the people informing us about the gas and oil industry how deep the gathering line near the middle school was. It's 8 feet below the surface of the ground. It's pressurized. That's not far below the ground. That's a huge threat as far as I'm concerned, and I cannot, we are over a barrel. As Councilman Rodriguez said, this is the first step, and we have gotten, this was a negotiated agreement. We gave some, they gave some too. They gave a lot, and we gave some. So I would invite those of you who have come down to the state legislature with Councilwoman Peck and Martin and Bagley and I to continue to come down to the state and continue to fight the quixotic battle of trying to get our state legislators to listen to us and vote for the people on the state level who will stand up for your rights. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anybody else in the queue, so I want to briefly, there's a lot of people, as I look back over at least since I've been on council, and I know that some of them, I know ironically, are either adamantly opposed to this or not going to vote for it, but making a statement that, I think that Councilmember Sarah Levison needs to be recognized. I think Mayor Dennis Coombs needs to be recognized. I think Alex Samore should be recognized because had he not, ultimately changed his vote, we wouldn't have made the step that allows us to have fracking essentially not banned, residential surface restriction, Mr. May, outside of Longmont. I also think that I know Doug Ray is really upset that we're going to pass this tonight, but he played a big part in this along with Kay Fissinger. Joan, you played a big part in this and want to thank you. I see Marilyn Hughes, Pat Davis, and Marisa back there. Thank you for your part in this. I don't see Michael Belmont or Judith Blackburn, but they were a big part in this, getting Amendment 300 passed. They back there? Oh, Karen Dyke. I was going to thank Abby Driscoll and Karen Dyke back down here. I'm not done with my list. Y'all. I see Strider there. You played a big part. So, I remember there were so many different people attacking this issue from so many different angles, and I'm not ready to declare victory yet. But nevertheless, this is a big step. People wanted it out of Longmont. It's still 8,000 feet below Longmont, which is a mile and a half setback vertical. But it gets it away from our citizens. And I've been waiting to respond, and somebody, I think it was Mr. Mark Osborne, who I respect his opinion, and he's participated in our council meetings quite a lot. They made the comment that I live over in Ward 1, and Dr. Waters lives over there in Ward 1. The flow line runs over under my neighborhood, I don't know if it's under my living room, but it's close. My children one child goes to Trail Ridge. I live stone's throw away from the Ryder Well. And I'm not being a NIMBY. My theory is that if I'm getting it away from my house, I'm getting it away from my neighbors. And the challenge was, well, you shouldn't be thinking about your family and your house. You got to think about all of us. Yeah, if my house is on the front line and I'm getting it further away from my house, by definition, I'm getting it further away from everybody's house. And so I'm not going to wait for my house to blow up. I'm not going to wait for the state to change the law. I'm not going to make a statement at the expense of, our children and our families and our homes and our property values and our lungs or whatever you want to say. I just think that this is the best we could have done, and it accomplished to a great extent what Amendment 300 set out to do. So there were a lot of people involved in this. So with that, I don't see anybody else in the queue. Did we have a vote or did we have a motion? So it's been moved and it's been seconded. Let's go ahead and vote. Are you in the queue? Can we make sure Councilmember Peck's in the queue at this point? Let's stop it. I think Councilmember, you don't want a picture of it? All right. I guess that's true. It's going to be verbal anyway. She's going to vote against it as a statement. We don't want her on. Make sure Councilmember Peck is not on the vote. Oh, sorry. I was just looking at the screen. What's the vote? What's the vote? And that passes unanimously with Councilmember Peck abstaining. No, just kidding. How do you vote, Councilmember? How do you vote? You don't show up. Okay. It passes 6-1 with Councilmember Peck against. All right. Thank you, everybody, and thanks everybody who showed up for that issue. Appreciate it. All right. Let's move on to 9D, adoption of citizen participation plan for HUD-funded programs. Do we have a presentation? Because I don't see the...
It's a public hearing.
It's a public hearing.
Well, right. What I'm saying is I guess what I'm saying is all we're doing is a public hearing, right? There's no
Correct.
presentation. There's no ordinance to read, right?
Correct.
Correct.
All right.
Unless you want me to summarize what's changed.
Why don't you briefly give
Okay.
it 60
I
seconds
can
or
do that
less?
very briefly. This is really housekeeping for the citizen participation plan for the CDBG and home program. As a result of a monitoring, there was a couple of things that had suggested we change within the citizen participation plan. So this takes care of that. It did go to the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board for their approval and recommendation, and we're in the middle of a 30-day comment period on the plan, not in the middle, we're almost at the end. So should council accept this, it would be subject to us bringing back if we can receive any comments between now and the end of the period. The main changes are to include the requirements for the affirmatively furthering fair housing within the citizen participation plan, including the city's limited English proficiency policy, which is a requirement of HUD funding, and designating a designee for the 504 coordination. So Joanne Zeese is who the person is for the city, but putting a designee within our department so that people have a more direct access to request accommodations. So that's the main bulk of the changes.
Right, thank you. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment on this issue? You gentlemen want to talk about HUD? You guys here tonight for HUD? No? Not here for HUD? Just kidding. Anyone else? Okay, if there's nobody else, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you very much. All right. There were no items removed from the consent agenda. No general business. Final call. Public invited to be heard. Oh, do we need the motion? Do I have a motion? Are we going to adopt it? Mayor Pro Tem? Or sorry, Councilmember Finley.
Oh, that's okay. Does Polly want to do it?
No, it was you. I just heard the beep to my right, and I just assumed it was the Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
I would move adoption of the citizen participation plan for HUD-funded programs. Second.
All right, let's vote. All right, that passes unanimously up until, all right, it's official. It is unanimous. 6+1. What? Yeah, Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Before we move on to the items removed, their general business, I would like to make a couple of motions. And the first one is because we are putting fracking under Union Reservoir, and there is so much data on that being contaminating our bodies of water. I want to move that when fracking commences at Union Reservoir, that we close the bathing area to people and animals and make Union Reservoir surface use only.
We appreciate your comments, and I'm sure some of us will be. There was a second by Mayor Pro Tem Christensen. Technically, I'm going to actually ask my fellow council members. Technically, we've got a spot on the agenda to talk about these things. I don't have a problem personally talking about it now, but are we going to start talking about these things at the end? And so I'm not going to rule it out of order or not. I'm just going to ask my fellow council members, are we going to stick by keeping these things at the beginning of the meetings, or are we going to start not? Mayor Pro Tem.
I do think because this is relevant to the issue that we just talked about, that it's appropriate to discuss it now.
Okay. Councilmember Martin, what do you think?
I think we should not change the rules, but I think we should make an exception this time because of Council Member Peck's inability to attend the beginning of the meeting.
Perfect.
For good reason.
I think I'm just going to make an executive decision. I think that's a pretty darn good reason. So we have a motion on the floor made by Councilmember Peck and the Mayor Pro Tem. And let's discuss. Councilmember Finley?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I will not be voting for this. I don't think there's a need to close the swim beach. It's quite a bit under. There's a big layer of shale. I don't think there's any danger to the community, and I think it's not necessary.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I was just wondering if staff could talk about the monitoring that we do of the water quality at the Union Reservoir, and if that would be sufficient once fracking commences.
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Rodriguez. So the city does testing typically for fecal coliform, which is a requirement of the Department of Health whenever you have swimming in open bodies of water, probably also in swimming pools, but they're chlorinated. So we do that testing at the reservoir. With respect to Councilmember Peck's motion, I think something we certainly could do, and we actually talked about this a little bit, is put out a notice, publicly notice. We could even post it at Union when the fracking operation is occurring, so that people are aware when they come in that it's occurring, and then they can make the decision. In other words, we don't necessarily close it for everybody, but certainly the folks that want to know and are concerned about it, they would be informed. I just throw that out as sort of a middle sort of ground that I think absolutely informs people and lets them make that decision. But just a thought.
Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Dale. Actually, that was going to be my second motion. The problem for me with testing is that the things that you're testing for now can be cleaned up. Once you test in benzene, you find benzene or one of the fracking chemicals in the water, it's too late. And that's my problem. At what point, even if it's 20 years from now, we are supposed to be looking at the future, at what we do as to how that affects our drinking water, and especially if we're going to be using Union Reservoir as domestic water. I think that I think that for health, safety, and welfare of people, we need to make sure they're safe. So I think we should vote on this, and then I'll make my next motion.
And I did want to just add to that, if I could, Mayor and Council, is that we can test the water, similar to what we do with the water quality monitoring, at the water quality monitoring sites around all the active and plugged and abandoned wells. We can certainly run a full spectrum on the BTEX constituents, if that would be helpful. I'm just throwing out things that we can do if that provides a greater level of security and trust.
And I think To answer Councilmember Rodriguez's question, we have a set of testing parameters now. We can increase those testing parameters for those other constituents.
During that time.
During that time, correct.
Dr. Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. In another life, when working with policymakers, I ran an organization that encouraged policymakers whenever possible to craft policy or develop policy based on research when you can. And if you don't have real clear bodies of research, as much evidence as possible. So I know the motion's on the floor. Is there any data? I know there are concerns. We all have concerns about drilling under the reservoir. But this is a proposal. Is there any research, any data, any evidence to support closing the swim beaches when drilling operations are going on that present a credible threat when people are involved, short of data that would be collected by our city staff?
Do you mind if we let, I know, do you mind if Joan goes? Councilmember Peck, do you want to address that? I believe the question was.
Thank you. Yes, there is data. Unfortunately, I don't have it tonight. So I can't answer that question comfortably.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I suggest that we amend Councilmember Peck's motion to say that when fracking commences, we close the swim beach for a period of 2 weeks while we make sure that we have all the evidence available and conduct appropriate testing for that period of time, and then we can revisit the decision of whether to leave it open or whether to leave it shut or open it back up while continuing to monitor.
All right. I guess I just have a couple. No one's in the queue, so I've got a couple. How close? So, just by way of reminder, the drilling was going to happen down south by the swim beach, about 750 feet away, and then more or less, give or take a stone's throw, and then but then we moved it up north of Union Reservoir. My question is, how far away is it now from the swim beach? And do we have that answer?
I don't, it's sort of like at the retreat, I don't know if I've got the exact number.
How wide
the Cooster
Union is?
site, the Cooster site that was sited on the south side of the reservoir was about 350 feet from the swim beach.
All right.
It was 750 feet from other structures. The wells, the Knight and the Olander site range from a distance of over a mile and a half to about a mile to the reservoir.
Okay. I guess the reason I asked, the other question I have is, you've got this. Has the Stamp well ever been fracked?
I'm sure it was.
Okay. And how close is that to the reservoir?
Oh, so this is going to be more of a guess, guys. I believe it's certainly within 500 feet to 700 feet of the reservoir.
And I remember sitting down and watching the fracking rigs out there to the south. Kay and I ate lunch a couple times watching them frack on the southeastern edge of the reservoir. How close is that Firestone drilling site to Union?
Council, there are two sites currently out there, one owned by Synergy Oil and Gas and the other one owned by Extraction. The Synergy site is actually the one that's closer into the reservoir. It's a distance that's a little further east than the Cooster site, so it was probably 500 to 700 feet from it. Harold's looking it up on Google Earth, so he'll probably correct me.
Now they're in the queue. But it's hundreds of feet, right? We're not talking a mile or It's hundreds of feet.
The Synergy site?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
And so I guess my thought was, there right now it might not be in city property, but people are fracking ongoing, and we're not closing the swim beach, and it's still within close proximity to the swim beach. And so that particular site, being over a mile and a half away, I mean, it's the VOCs, the spillage, and it's going to be far enough away from the reservoir that I'm not too concerned that it's going to spill into the water. And so,
so the
that
answer
is my
to
thought.
the answer to the Synergy site is that it's about 650 to 700 feet from
Okay.
Union Reservoir.
All right. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'm not adverse to Councilmember Peck's motion, but I really don't feel comfortable voting on it without the data and information surrounding the topic at this time.
Councilmember Martin.
I think that's the same thing for me. First of all, I would like to ask Councilmember Peck if the main concern is surface spills or whether the main concern is contamination of the water from underneath.
Councilmember Peck. Want to chime in again? Say it again.
My concern is contamination of the water. And even though synergy and extraction are not part of this agreement, and I know that synergy, or I was told that synergy was not fracking under Union Reservoir when we had our ban in place. What they're doing now, I don't have a clue. And this just doesn't apply. My motion does not just apply to this agreement. It applies to anyone who is fracking under our reservoir extraction, Anadarko, Synergy, that they all have the risk of contaminating that water. And I personally do not think that I want to take the chance of being responsible for anyone's health because that is happening. I know we can't stop it. It has to be stopped on the state level. But we can make a statement here that we do care about the health, safety, and wellness, excuse me, of people, and that I would table this motion to get some data back as far as has there ever been any contamination of bodies of water that are publicly owned. I know that Texas, or they have a pretty far distance from when a well can be far enough away from bodies of the water that they wouldn't be able to reach it with fracking. So I think this is a concern and we need to think about it, even though the agreement passed. So I will table it until the next regular meeting.
Mayor, if I can jump in, there was one question on distances that we want to give you the accurate distance. From the Knight side, it's 2,100 feet, and from the Olander side, it's 5,560 feet.
From the swim beach?
No, from the northern shores of Union.
So it's okay. So it's 2,100 feet, almost a half, not a third of a mile, a little bit over a third of a mile. No, yeah, I know.
We will have the distances to the swim beach. I'm just telling you that's the distance to the north shore and the edge of the water.
Got it. I guess my concern to the benzene would be it's at the location of the drill site, and so if it's far enough away, that's not going to be. If there's a problem at Union, it's going to be because if you're 8,000 feet underneath, it's going to be because there's some major disaster with the shale formation, and we're going to have gas leaks. All right, let's go ahead. She's withdrawn her motion, and we'll go ahead and raise that again at the next one, please, Councilmember Peck. All right, Councilmember. Let's go ahead. Final call, public invited to be heard. Go ahead. You waited patiently.
Thank you, council members, and I apologize I didn't get my name on the list. My name's Amy Olivier, and I am a Longmont resident. I live at 1050 16th Avenue. I actually grew up in Boulder County, just up the canyon in Allen's Park, and I've lived everywhere in Colorado and was thrilled to come back and live here in Longmont at home. We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreaker. It is time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his actions. Ronald Reagan said that. I'm a single mother. I reside here in Longmont, and I have been stalked and harassed at my apartment complex. Myself and my children have also been the target in the past of a mentally unstable stranger. At that time, the government failed me and my family. This individual had been jailed 80 times for assault, theft, and burglary, and other crimes against citizens. He continued to be released, time after time, until he attacked myself and my children unprovoked. This man was chronically homeless and with a history of mental illness. He was not charged with felony child abuse and attempted murder as I was promised. Incredulously, I was never advised of his overnight speedy trial, and he was back on the streets in 60 days. I had to tell my children to run for their lives while I waited for this monster to bash my head in. I'm lucky to be alive, but there is no feeling in the world like one when you believe you are about to die. I won't and don't have to be a victim again because of any local government overreach. I'm not the NRA or a PAC or a racist white male. I'm a local resident. I'm not even a current gun owner. My son is. But as a free American, I reserve the right to be. Our founders are celebrated for their foresight. The U.S. is unique in its freedoms, and it was for a reason. The right to bear arms wasn't the 7th, 8th, or 9th Amendment. It literally follows the right to free speech. I said before, I'm a mother. I have 2 children. I have a 19-year-old in college, and I have a son here at a high school. We are also a Columbine High School family. We have lived in a community where tragedy struck, and it is a heartbreaking bond that is felt so deeply that it's unexplainable. Those of us here advocating for our Second Amendment rights also love our kids, we love our community, and it's time to have meaningful conversation, and I urge this council to have conversation about protecting our children and arming our teachers, because criminals don't listen.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? I'm seeing the hands. Come on up. Why don't we start with the gentleman? Why don't you just come? Yeah, just start forming a line. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Jaffer Partoma. I'm from Aurora, Colorado. I just wanted to share an experience I had last summer. It opened my eyes to how our society works, how this system works. My wife's mother passed away recently. Prior to her passing, I packed up the kids and my wife, and we drove to New York to go visit with her. The intention was to drop them off, to escort them to New York, make sure they made it safely. I would fly home and return to work while they enjoyed an extended stay. I thought I was following the laws, the federal law that protects firearm owners as they travel through restrictive states. I also felt that I was in compliance with the Transportation Safety Administration's guidelines on how to fly with a firearm, unloaded, locked away in a hard-sided case, packed in your luggage to be checked. To my surprise, when I tried to return home, I was greeted by the Port Authority police and placed into handcuffs and put under arrest for violating their handgun laws. What I had found out, and I don't want to take too much time, while I was waiting for the squad car to take me to jail, I was speaking with the police officers and asking them, what about my Second Amendment rights? I was told by the captain that they get to determine how those rights are expressed. I forget the exact words he used. I was speaking with the police officers. The next step, well, how would I go about getting a concealed carry permit for New York City? New York City does not recognize anybody else's permits, not even other counties within New York. They're extremely strict. So I asked, okay, can I get a permit for New York City? How would I go about getting one? And I was told that you would have to go to your precinct where you reside. And when I reminded him that I don't reside in New York anymore, I was originally from New York, they scratched their head, they didn't understand. So it opened my eyes to understand that the police officers are well-intentioned, and their job is to enforce the laws that are on the book. when I was speaking with them, they understood the predicament I was in. They even agreed that this was frivolous and this was something that was unnecessary. But because the law was on the book, they had to enforce it. And so I found myself, missing work. My wife and kids are, feeling anxious and dealing with a lot of stress because of the possibility I was facing 3 felonies and potential 3.5 years in prison. Now, I was the one who notified them that I was in possession of a firearm because that's what the federal law says. Transportation Safety Administration says you must declare it when you're flying. So it seems unreasonable for me.
I'm going to have to cut you off, but I almost didn't because I'm sitting here
I'm sorry.
following your story
All
so
I
much.
want to
but
say
thank
is
you.
that I learned firsthand that
I've got to
the police
I-
officers, you
I'm
can't
gonna
fight
have
it
to
with the
cut you
police,
off.
you can't fight it with the courts.
I
Here
appreciate
is
it.
where these
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I have to cut you off. Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right. Sir, go ahead.
I addressed you a little while ago.
You got some more to say.
I'm Charlie, and some things that maybe the council does not know regarding firearms. Can you hear me? Okay. A few things that maybe the council doesn't really know. Now, I heard the word weapons one time tonight by our mayor, and how many of you people right now are carrying a weapon? One? How about the rest of you? You're no weapon? Has anybody got a pen in their pocket?
Got about
Okay,
8.
that is a weapon if it is used as such. My point is, let's get on the termination of what a weapon is. In my classes, I don't use the word weapon. I use it as a firearm. A firearm does not offend anybody. The word weapon does. It puts everybody on edge. Terminology, assault weapon. Do you know what the legal definition of an assault weapon is? I doubt if you do. The legal definition is a firearm that will fire more than one round with one pull of a trigger. That is a legal description from ATF of what an assault weapon is. These ARs that you see, everybody, and it's the most common gun on the market today, are all semi-automatic firearms. It will fire one round with one pull of the trigger. Now these bump stocks, that what they have, it's still one pull of the trigger. The only difference is you're using recoil that you in there, and just the bumping of it will set it off to where 700 rounds a minute. The other thing I was talking about is how we categorize that. Let's go back to the terminology of what a weapon is, and let's call it what it actually is by definition of law. Now, I'm not going to have enough time to go with what Boulder did, but I've heard the word vote. They did not vote on with the people. There was one over there that did suggest putting this ordinance up to the vote. They refused to do it because when they had their original bit, the pros were about 3-1 with the antis. They knew that it would never pass by having a vote of the people in Boulder City. So unanimously, the council passed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. There was one other. Yep, sir.
Howdy. My name is Lance Tuvey. I live at 2143 Steel here in Longmont. I want to thank you guys for sitting there and listening to all of us. I also want to echo what Gwen said earlier. It's great to listen to everybody because it's obvious that you guys care and you're really trying to listen and learn from this. And the pledge to start, heck yes, we're still part of this great nation, unlike some places that want to decide that they were not. And I am a white, insecure, arrogant, racist male, according to a definition I heard here tonight. And as my friend just stated, it all depends on definitions. The military's definition of an assault weapon is quite different from what the anti-rights groups want to tell you is an assault weapon. Calling an AR-15, which we call a modern sporting rifle, an assault weapon is just plain wrong. I wanted to say that of the more than 15 million AR-15s in this country, do you know how many are not involved in crime? More than 15 million. Less than 0.01% of the AR-15s in this country are involved in crime, and yet some people want to take advantage of that and ban them from everyone. A congressionally mandated study in 1990, studying the assault weapon ban from 1994 to 2004, found that the assault weapon ban had absolutely no impact. In fact, murder rates went up 19.3% with the ban. Now, from 2004 to 2014, this country sold 160 million guns, 15 million of which were AR-15s. Violent crime went down 52%, a 44-year low. The murder rate went down 54%. This was an all-time low. All this at a time when the ownership of the banned guns and large capacity magazines were at an all-time high. A 1996, 97, and 98 CDC study showed that firearms are used defensively 2.5 million times annually in those 3 years. This is something you don't really hear about, but this study came to light about, well, to my knowledge, about 2 months ago. And I just want to remind everyone that in the last couple really horrific shootings that we heard about, the laws were broken beforehand, and none of the laws stopped them, and I don't know how any more laws would. So anyway, thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great night.
Ma'am, would she like to say something? Thank you. No? Okay, all right. All right, anybody else? Well, come on up.
Could I have 1 minute?
You've already had your 3. Sorry. But no, I mean, yeah, sorry.
Good evening. Sorry to keep you here any longer, but I was sitting and listening to everybody, and I couldn't wait any longer. So my name is Ty Harper. I am a resident of Longmont, 936 Pinion Court, lived here for 25 years, lifetime resident of Colorado, grew up in the 60s when carrying a gun was something you used for hunting. I've had guns in my life my entire life. My dad was a gun owner. My grandparents were all gun owners. And I love Colorado, and I hunt here every year for that reason. But I also keep guns for personal protection. So 3 times in my life, without a concealed carry, I've had to pull a gun to protect myself. I've never been in a position where I had to shoot that gun. I've only had to show it, and it scared the perpetrators off, which I think says an awful lot about the cowards that we're really dealing with. Gun owners aren't the cowards. Criminals are the cowards. Gun owners are people like those of us who've spoken tonight that care about the safety and welfare of our community just exactly the same way as everyone else in this room. I don't want kids to die. I don't want people to get hurt. I've never, ever in my life thought, oh my gosh, I just want to go out and kill somebody. And yet I've owned guns, own several guns, and still have no reason ever to want to kill anybody. I realize you mentioned that there was not much you guys can do because of the law. I appreciate very much the fact that you sat here and listened to all of this tonight. And I very much appreciate that you all hold the positions that you do, because it's a position that I would find intolerable for myself. So thank you for that. And honestly, I'm way more scared about this fracking stuff you guys are talking about, because I don't live that far from you. So that's all I had to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? It's been a while. Come back to you guys. You can still want to talk about the HUD stuff? No? All right. Okay. All right. Seeing nobody else, let's go ahead and close final public invited to be heard. And let's move on to mayor and council comments. Anybody? Councilmember Peck.
See, that's what you get when I miss half the meeting.
Hey,
I have to talk a lot.
Joan, we're glad you're here.
So, on the gun issue, I don't care how many guns Mayor Bagley has. I don't care how many guns you guys have. What I've heard, and I watched this at home with my husband, the first half, what I've heard and what I think is true and what I care about are two things. First of all, Councilwoman Christensen brought up the idea of oral discourse and having a public forum, and it was tweaked in the conversation with both councilors Rodriguez and Waters, saying they would be open to a discussion as to how we, as this incredible society in Longmont, can come up with some real solutions. And our big solution, our big problem, is mental health. I've heard that and heard it. But mental health requires money. It requires money to hire psychiatrists. It requires passion to go to the school board and tell them to hold classes educating children on firearms, but also to hire valid psychologists and psychiatrists to deal with bullying, to deal with divorce, children of divorce, anything that a hormonal child feels is overwhelming to them and they have to deal with. So I really think we need that. I totally believe in civil discourse and that this is a government of and by for the people. So I've heard a lot of things. I wrote a letter to a constituent who wrote me and said that that suicides, there were more gun deaths by suicide than there were by shootings. But the big difference is the suicidal people make the choice to take their life. The other people, the children in schools, they don't make that choice. So again, I would like to have that civil discourse. And Gloria Steinem used to call these pockets of democracy, where people get together and they state the issue and they come to a solution for your society. So if you're willing to put up money in some way to make this, because we have mental illness and homelessness, we have mental illness in our schools, some of the parents are mentally ill, but not the kids, and it could be nothing more than a very slight depression. But we need to cope with this, and I think, for me, that's the way I would go with it, and that's what I would advocate for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Peck. All right, seeing nobody else in the queue, are there any city manager remarks?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
Mr. May, city attorney remarks?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, great. That was fairly painless. Let's adjourn.